Folks, I have a bit of a confession to make, and if you're standing up, you should probably sit down for this one. Ready? Here it goes. I am a frequent user of Reddit. I'll give you all a moment to absorb that. However, there are two bits of good news, though. Firstly, as you can see, I am outside, which means I have the wherewithal to go and touch grass, as the kids say, so not all hope is lost. Good news number two, for despite the absolute dregs of humanity that Reddit gives a platform to, there are some good things about it, some diamonds in the rough, if you will. Specifically, the writing subreddits that I mostly frequent. And in my constant hunt for book recommendations, one title kept popping up. One title that many on these subreddits claimed was the scariest, most disturbing, most obscene book they'd ever read. And that book is a little novel called The Troop by Nick Cutter. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. What, the wide-eyed Scotsman from that British TV show about the dinosaurs? He wrote a book? Well, no. This Nick Cutter is the pen name of author Craig Davidson, who also goes by Patrick Lestuca. Okay? Can't say I've read anything by any of these three men before until The Troop, which I finally picked up after seeing it invoked for the 9,000th time on Reddit. So, how does Reddit's scariest novel hold up? Scoutmaster Tim Riggs takes 5 boys, Matt, Kent, Ephraim, Shelley, and Newton, to a desolate island for some wilderness survival training. But when a mysterious patient afflicted with a parasitic contagion shipwrecks on the same island, social breakdown erupts among the troop, and the boys' true colors begin to show, spearheaded by the genetically altered tapeworms that eat them from within. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know my taste in horror, and you know how dissatisfied I've been with the horror I've been reading lately. I've been dying for a palate cleanser, and it pleases me to say that The Troop is that palate cleanser. What we have here is an emotional, grim, disturbing, and sometimes comical romp through the darkest depths of body horror and environmental isolation. This book was described as 28 Days Later meets Lord of the Flies, and I could not agree more. Pretty much everything about this book, from the characters to the story beats to the brutality, just made me feel sick, like stomach-churning nausea, and I mean that in a good way. The characters are well defined with rich backstories. The framing device of the science and conspiracies that led up to the tapeworm contagion is darkly intriguing. The tension is masterfully spun. The disturbing elements do not hold back. I have mentioned before that I have this morbid fascination with parasites. Like, one of my favorite shows growing up on Animal Planet was Monsters Inside Me, and the creatures in The Troop are portrayed with such rigor and detail that I felt like things crawling all around me as I read. Really well done on that front. The dynamic between the boys is also very good. Each brings their own neuroses to the table, and they play off each other very well. Their snappy dialogue was straight out of The Sandlot or Stand By Me, and I legitimately laughed a lot reading it. I think Newton's my favorite. He's like this book's equivalent of Piggy from Lord of the Flies, and Shelley, the fucked up one in the group, just had this way of forcing me to keep reading to see just how low this kid's depravity could truly go. The stuff surrounding him is not for the faint of heart, and what happens between him and Ephraim is a deliciously dark kink in this story about parasites and infection. Granted, it did echo a bit too strongly from Stephen King's Child Psychopaths. I was getting serious Patrick Hockstetter vibes, but whereas Patrick was a side character, Shelley is given more of a chance to shine as this book's main antagonist. It may sound like I'm being overly positive about this book, and yeah, it is very good, but it was such a refreshing experience to read, and it reiterated what good horror can be. But I did have 2 issues with it, both with the writing style. 1, an overuse of similes. Now, I love a good simile. They are great linguistic devices. They're creative and emphatic, and they can really show off a writer's imagination and vocabulary. But in this book, I swear there's a simile at least once every 1 or 2 paragraphs. Like, at a certain point, you can just say things for what they are. No need to invoke zebras or whatever. The second issue is an overuse of anecdotes. There are several points in this story where a character will see something in the present day and then flash back to a very specific and elaborate story from their past that just goes off on a tangent, and the point is to convey that this thing that they're seeing in the present is the same thing that they felt in the past with this experience. These are also a good linguistic device, more or less follows the same logic as similes, but these happen multiple times throughout the story with several different characters. At one point I just set the book down and thought, oh really? You too had this absurdly specific experience in your past that reminds you of this weird thing from the present? What are the odds? Again though, if you've been following my channel for a while and you're looking for a good horror novel that can truly move you, this here is a prime candidate. I am definitely going to check out more from Nick Cutter, as his other titles are also invoked as standout scary. And I encourage the rest of you to go check out the troupe for yourselves and see just what good horror can be. If you can stomach it, of course.